So, what is life? For centuries, we've thought the answer lies in biology. But what if it doesn't? What if life isn't physical at all? Today, we're diving into a text that just might flip everything you thought you knew about existence completely on its head. All right, let's just jump right in with a pretty deep question. Is your body you? Or is it just something you use? Think about it. When you look in the mirror, is that the real you staring back? Or is it more like the car your consciousness is driving around? Well, according to the text we're looking at today, it's definitely the second one. So, to even begin to talk about where life comes from, this source material says we've got to completely redefine what life is. Yeah, that basically means tossing out the old biology textbooks for a minute and looking at something, well, something you can't really touch or see. Okay, so what is this new definition? The text puts it this way. Life isn't the physical stuff, the atoms and molecules. It's a spiritual antimatter structure that has consciousness. It's kind of like it exists on a whole different plane from our physical world. A good way to think about it is your body is the hardware, but your life, your consciousness, is the software that's actually running the whole show. This whole idea really splits existence into two parts. First, you've got the carrier. That's our physical body, and it's temporary. Then you have the essence. That's the real deal, the spiritual consciousness. And the core argument here is pretty wild. We go through our whole lives thinking the carrier, the body, is who we are, when it's really just the shell. To make this a little easier to grasp, the text uses a really cool, if a bit old school, analogy, a fax machine. Imagine the original document. That's the body. It stays in one place, but the information on it, that's the soul, gets turned into a signal, sent across the world, and printed out on a new piece of paper. The information, the message itself, is what truly matters, right? Not the paper it's printed on. Okay, so if we're running with this idea that consciousness is the main event, then it should have some serious power over the physical body, right? I mean, it should be able to control it in some pretty amazing ways. And, well, that's exactly the case the text makes, and it brings out some pretty stunning stories to back it up. The first one is, it's a wild one. It comes from an ancient text called Feng Shenbeng. The story goes that a minister literally has his heart removed, but he keeps walking and talking, totally animated by just his consciousness. It's only when some random person on the street tells him, hey, a person can't live without a heart, that his belief system shatters. And in that instant, his consciousness leaves and he just drops dead on the spot. Here's another one that's just as startling. A death row inmate is blindfolded and told he's going to bleed to death. The executioner makes a tiny, harmless scratch on his wrist and then lets him hear the sound of dripping water. The prisoner, completely convinced it's his own blood that he's dying, well, his consciousness accepts it, and his body just shuts down. He dies, even though he barely lost a single drop of blood. This idea of a consciousness that can stick around even after the body is gone shows up in another really strange story. It's about a vendor who chops the head off a snake. Hours later, while he's cleaning up, the severed head actually bites him. The argument here? The snake's will, its consciousness, hung around long after its body was destroyed, all for one last act of revenge. And this isn't all just ancient stories and legends. The source points to a modern example, a hospital mix-up. A perfectly healthy patient gets a terminal cancer diagnosis by mistake and just rapidly declines, wastes away. At the same time, the patient who actually had cancer gets the all-clear report and makes it miraculous, spontaneous recovery. It's like their belief, what they held in their consciousness, literally rewrote their physical reality. So what all this boils down to is a really simple but pretty profound formula. The soul, let's call that 1, plus the body, also a 1, doesn't equal 2. No, it equals 1. A single, unified entity we call life, where consciousness is absolutely the one in charge. Okay, so let's zoom out for a second. If consciousness is the key to life for an individual, what about on a cosmic scale? What does that mean for everything? Well, the text takes this exact same logic and applies it to build a completely different creation story for our entire planet. Right, so in this version of events, there's no Big Bang, no random chance. The universe is the intentional, deliberate work of a being the text calls the greatest creator. Think of it like a cosmic architect with a very specific blueprint. And this whole creation story is incredibly focused on Earth. First, the Earth is formed. Then, the sun and all the other planets are brought in and put in just the right spots to serve our planet. After that, celestial beings show up to terraform the place, create the atmosphere, the water, the plants. And get this, the moon isn't a natural satellite. It was constructed like a massive engineering project just to create tides and stabilize the weather. So in this view, Earth isn't some cosmic accident. It's the main stage, and it was built on purpose. Okay, so this whole creation narrative, it leads us right to the text's most, let's say, controversial claim. And it's one that goes head to head with a fundamental idea in modern biology. What the text does is set up a direct showdown of ideas. On one side, you have the scientific view, random evolution, species developing from common ancestors over millions of years. On the other side, you have this view, intentional creation, where every major species was designed one by one. The analogy they use is pretty straightforward. A horse-drawn cart, no matter how many millions of years you give it, is never going to evolve into a truck by itself. It needs a designer to step in. And that really brings us to the final, powerful question that this whole thing leaves us with. The entire argument hinges on this one massive idea. Consciousness isn't something that comes from the physical world. It's the thing that creates the physical world. And if there's even a tiny bit of truth to that, you have to ask yourself, just how much power do your own thoughts, your own beliefs, have in shaping not just your body, but the actual reality you wake up to every single day?